Nature's power, measured first in magnitude and level of destruction. Hours turn to days, with millions of people left homeless, powerless, dependent on the mercy of others.
I pray that we can do that and help these people out.
Days turn into weeks of waiting and waiting. Frustration grows as winter sets in, and the misery deepens. The predictions are dire. Tens of thousands face death from the elements and disease. But the first signs of spring come early, and with them, hope. And now, rising from the ruins in the earthquake zone, a CNN special presentation.
It's been nearly 5 months since the earth shook violently from Islamabad to the Himalayan mountains. In the ruins of scores of villages and towns, death still lingers, yet the most dire predictions of even more death have failed to materialise, thankfully, at least in the numbers first feared. And that is largely because the winter was not as cold or as long as first predicted, also because the tents and blankets and food supplies were widely and quickly distributed, but also because of the hardiness of these people. Over the past week, we've been up close with one family, watching their struggle to rebuild their lives. In the next half hour, you're going to see their story, a story that is so typical of what is facing the people here rising from the ruins.
Life is normal, but in this tent, how good can life be?
Muhammad Anwar is talking to me about a life that has become all too distressingly normal. Days turn to nights, one after another, and life in a tent is all this family has. The tent sits in a makeshift village, one of hundreds that have dotted the mountains of Kashmir since last October's devastating earthquake. 35-year-old Muhammad, his wife Zarina, and their 2 surviving sons, Naveed, 18, and 10-year-old Navazish, wonder about their future. A life once full of plans and dreams, shattered when they lost everything. All they owned gone in an instant. A home, school for the children, Muhammad's job, and a son crushed in the rubble.
We normally talk about the past. I say to my boys, don't worry, it is the work of Allah, and soon everything will be all right. These things have happened in the past and will happen in the future. Don't worry, it is part of life.
I met Muhammad and his family once before, weeks after the earthquake. I found them clinging together in a tiny tent, much smaller than the one they call home now. Muhammad's eyes then told of a deep sadness, staring out, empty and lost. His wife's pain, her grief for her dead son, unbearable. Nearly 5 months have passed, and time is slowly, ever so slowly, healing. The Muhammad Anwar I meet now has a new life in his eyes. He embraces me and a smile lights up his face. His young son, Navazish, flies a kite with a friend. The little things that say life does go on. Before I stayed a matter of hours. This time I plan to spend a week. In coming days we'll see up close a story of survival, of the generosity of strangers, and above all, the love of a family. Time has turned for Muhammad Anwar and his family and their town of Bagh. This area was devastated by the earthquake. About 80% of it damaged. Thousands of people were killed. Well, now the signs of the devastation are a little less visible. There is, as you can see, a lot more bustle on the streets. And more importantly, spring has come early, bringing an end to the bitter cold of winter and its own promise of a new beginning. The snow has melted, visible now only as a light covering on distant mountaintops. The streams flow again. People now wash and wade in the water. Yet look closely, there are reminders. Children who survived looking after younger siblings. The solemn work of carving out headstones for as yet unmarked graves. The haunted, hungry faces of men desperate for work. And the faces of Muhammad Anwar, his wife and children. The lessons of a disaster, the dark days, from which they are only now emerging.
I think to myself, if I am alive today, I may not be tomorrow. My child went to school in front of my eyes. At 7:30, he was with me. Then he went to school. At 2 o'clock, his dead body was brought back to me. I think now our life is like a minute.
A minute that's now written in long days and weeks inside a tent in the mountains of Kashmir, with the dream that a new day may bring new hope. Zarina Bibi's tears say more than mere words ever could. The strain of her life tells on her face. Only 30 years old, she has aged before her time. She has given birth to 3 children, the first when she was only 12. Her tears now are for the child she has buried. He was 13.
Whenever I eat or sleep, I see my dead child. His face comes before my eyes. I love him so much. Before the earthquake, I could never think I could lose my child.
The earthquake has taken almost everything from Zarina. Now her life is this small tent. She sits here with her niece, preparing what food she can get for her family. Some tomatoes, some onions, and chicken innards go into the pot. She cooks with care. She has a husband and 2 other boys who depend on her, but her thoughts are elsewhere.
I always think about my child. His memory makes me feel sick inside. I have cried so much, my eyes are no longer working. I think I can no longer see.
From one tent, she moves to another. Here she gently kneads dough for bread. She barely speaks as she moves about.
It's very hard to live in this tent. In early days, we had no blankets, but after some time, we got relief from the aid agencies. Now we are feeling better, but it is very hard to cook because we have so little food.
Meals served, her family eats mostly in silence. Where other dinner tables would be full of talk of school, work and friends, plans for the future, Zarina and her husband Mohammed break the silence only to murmur softly. Zarina is worried for her husband. Before the earthquake, he had regular work as a labourer. Now he can't find a job. There is no money coming in.
Now he just sits in his tent. God gives my children life, but it's up to their father to find a job and provide food.
For now, Zarina has a lifeline. Her brother runs a local grocery store. He provides her with basic food, sometimes some money, enough to get her family by. Zarina says it is desperately needed, especially now there is less emergency aid available.
Relief groups early on issued us a relief card we could use for supplies. But some of these groups and agencies have moved on, and new groups don't accept the card.
There are times when the 30-year-old Zarina allows herself to forget reality and dream of a nice car, a beautiful house, she tells me. But the fantasy is fleeting. Her 2 surviving children remind her of the son and the home she lost.
Sometimes I'm thinking I should have died with my child. Living like this is so difficult. I'm better off dead.
Looking on, her husband Mohammed, who knows it is up to him to give his wife a reason to live. It is Muhammad Anwar's eyes that tell his story. When I first met him, they were blank. That was weeks after the earthquake that took his home and his 13-year-old son. He told me then he was struggling to find the will to go on. In a daze, he led his family on a 45-kilometre trek down the mountains, his wife and 2 remaining sons, to the town of Bagh, seeking shelter, a town where 2/3 of the buildings were flattened that October morning, and all they had was this flimsy tent. 5 months on, there is a flicker of hope in Mohammed's eyes. The family sleeps in this larger, warmer tent provided by the United Nations relief teams. The small tent is still there, but is used now for cooking. Mohammed and his family have got through the winter.
We burn wood in winter and cooked food. We stayed warm. Without wood, it would have been difficult to survive.
But surviving the winter does not guarantee a future. Mohammed needs money. He needs work.
I cannot even think about life. If the government gives us money, I would like to buy land and build our own house. And if we cannot find money, I will work hard.
The government is starting a jobs program, in some areas promising 100 days of work a year to earthquake survivors. But Mohammed's only hope of a job is at the labour market in Barg. He passes the ruins left by the earthquake, reminders of the disaster that put him here. Well, it's the cool of the morning now, and Mohammed has taken his place among the rest of these men here looking, waiting for work. By the number of faces you can see around me, whether or not he finds a job, well, from here, it's a lottery. The earthquake left more than 3 million families across northeastern Pakistan homeless, their breadwinners helpless.
What can I do? I know only this kind of work. If I get a job, okay. Otherwise, I stand here and wait.
Mohammed knows his wife is anxious, depressed about their prospects, but he struggles for an answer.
A woman normally feels work should happen. I should find a job, but I know all I can do is believe in God and hope.
Hope alone is not enough for Mohammed or any of these men today. The hours pass, no one I see finds a job. It has all taken a toll. We find Mohammed the next morning, unable to get out of bed. The winter has left him with a hacking cough. The fever has flared again overnight. Zarina watches over him, but there is little she can do. We take him to a local Islamic relief tent for medicine, one of hundreds dotted through the mountains. The doctor confirms he has a fever and tells him to rest. Back in the tent they call home, Mohammed and Zarina talk of their 2 sons. He has no money to send them to school, he tells her. He may have to ask relatives again for more money. His eyes are blank yet again, drained by stress and humiliation. Spring has come early to the mountains of Kashmir. A field of flowers is in bloom, but it camouflages tragedy. These yellow petals are pushing up through tiny graves. What was a school playground is now a garden graveyard. Small headstones telling of the hundreds of children who died here. The few surviving children now take class surrounded by the memory of their dead classmates. And among the boys, I see a familiar face. I first met Hamza Nazir months ago. Then, with a cheeky grin, he asked where I was from, Australia. He then recited the names of the Australian cricket team.
Justin Langer, Gilchrist.
It had been Hamza's dream to play cricket for his country. But as he tells me again, as we walk through this graveyard, he no longer had anyone to play with. His friends, he says, were dead. Do you still think about your friends?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes.
What do you think?
I think that they were very great, but dead.
Hamza too could so easily have been among the victims. On the day the quake struck, he lay trapped under the rubble of his family home for a few minutes until he was rescued by his father and uncles. According to official reckoning, at least half of the nearly 80,000 killed in last October's earthquake were children. Here alone, Hamza tells me, as many as 400 perished. Many thousands across Pakistan were orphaned. Hamza lost his home, but he was lucky. His family all survived. 18-year-old Naveed and his 10-year-old brother Nawazish were less fortunate. Not only was their home destroyed, their family left destitute, but they lost their 13-year-old brother. Now they are refugees in Hamza's hometown, Bagh. As they're not locals, they don't qualify for town schooling. The UN has set up emergency classrooms across the quake zone, but not enough for the hundreds of thousands of children left without homes or schools. And the construction of new schools will have to wait until the spring. So the brothers go without education at a crucial time in their development. Their parents are struggling to raise money for Naveed to go away to a boarding school. Not much to most of us, only 2,000 rupees, about $30 US, but out of reach for their unemployed father. So, for now, the two brothers study in their tent, their work punctuated by constant sniffles and coughs. I'm trying to study, but how can I study in a tent, Naveed tells me. There is a school in this town and many teachers. My father and I have talked to them and asked them to teach me, but they say they have no time. Naveed's mother, Zarina, says she wants him to get married, find a job.
After school, he should marry because I cannot support him. He must get a job, but first, marriage.
Away from his mother, a shy, embarrassed Naveed tells me he has other plans. No, I will not get married, he says. I will try to get a job, but I will not marry now. Such weighty thoughts are far from Hamza's mind. He's turning 12 today. He's made some new friends. But none of them want to answer my questions about the earthquake. The talk is only of cricket. Hamza and I make a handy partnership. Some boys here in Bagh have rediscovered the fun of growing up. For others, life seems to offer nothing but adversity.